wind drove the dead leaves across the porch like restless spirits. Lantern light flickered inside the crooked homestead, throwing jagged shadows over warped boards. Clara May knelt on splinters, breath shallow, cheek already swelling purple where Silas Boone's fist had landed. The smell of whiskey and old smoke clung to him as he loomed in the doorway. "You think you can shame me?" His voice slurred but sharp enough to cut. The bottle in his hand glinted. "Luck turned 'cause of you." Clara's fingers tightened around the locket at her throat. "I did nothing, Silas." He staggered closer, boots grinding dust into the floor. "You breathe wrong and the cards die. That's what you are. Death on a table." He ripped the locket free, flung it to the dirt. "Your mama's echo dies tonight." The storm outside swelled, wind howling through cracked shutters, lantern glass rattled. Clara rose, trembling but steady. "I won't stay here." His laugh cracked like a gunshot. "You think the prairie will save you? Coyotes would rather starve." He stepped forward, backhand flashing. The strike rang in her skull, hot copper in her mouth. She stumbled toward the door. Boards groaned, hinges shrieked as she shoved it open. Cold night slammed her face. Rain and dust whipped across the yard. "Run, little Echo," Silas shouted after her. "The dark'll finish what I start." Clara bolted into the storm, skirts snapping, bare feet cutting on stones. Lightning flashed across the plains, turning the world white for a heartbeat. Behind her, the door banged open and shut, his curses chasing her through the wind. She reached the fence line, breath tearing at her ribs. Beyond lay only endless prairie, black, hungry, unknown. Yet the horizon pulsed with a faint silver glow where dawn would come. Clara pressed a hand to her cheek, felt the bruise throb. She whispered to the night, voice ragged but fierce, "I am your echo." The wind answered with a low moan through the mesquite, carrying the smell of rain and faraway sage. She stepped into the darkness, leaving the house and Silas's rage behind, each stride a vow that the next sound to carry her name would be her own. The prairie stretched empty and black beneath a starless sky. Clara's breath came in ragged bursts, each one a cloud that vanished into the cold. The storm had blown east, leaving a silence so deep it felt alive. Her feet bled from sharp stones hidden in the tall grass, but she kept running until the land sank into a dry creek bed. She stumbled down the bank and collapsed against the gnarled trunk of a cottonwood. The cracked earth smelled of dust and old rain. For a heartbeat she believed she'd lost him. A low whistle cut the night. Bootsteps crunched above the ridge. Silas Boone stepped into the pale slice of moonlight, hat brim hiding his eyes, whiskey glinting in the bottle swinging from his hand. "Thought you were clever, girl." His voice was slow, almost kind. But echoes always find their way home. Clara scrambled backward. "Stay away, Silas." He slid down the bank with the ease of a predator, rope coiled at his belt. "Ain't no one out here but coyotes. You'll make fine company for 'em." He caught her wrist before she could rise, twisting until her shoulder burned. The bottle fell, shattering like brittle bones. "Let me go!" Her voice cracked. Silas laughed low and mean. "You don't get to leave me humiliated." He jerked the rope around her wrists, knotting it tight. The coarse hemp bit deep, burning her skin. She struggled, heels digging furrows in the dust. "Someone will find me. No one rides this trail." He pulled the rope once more, then shoved her against the cottonwood's rough bark. "Coyotes'll sing you to sleep." The night wind carried a long, mournful howl. Silas stepped back, eyes catching Tool. He faint moonlight, a flicker of satisfaction there. "You keep quiet now. Let the earth swallow your sound." He turned and climbed the bank, boots sliding on loose stones. Clara listened to the steady scrape of his spurs until even that was gone. Only the wind remained, whispering through hollow reeds like a dying hymn. She tested the knots, wrists raw and slick with blood. The sky above thickened with clouds, swallowing what little light remained. Her heartbeat slowed to the rhythm of the distant coyotes. "Erase my last echo," she breathed, the words almost lost to the dark. Dust settled around her like a shroud, and the prairie answered with silence. Dawn bled pale over the ridges, a thin silver ribbon cutting the black prairie. Elias Hart rode the fence line before sunrise, his old bay gelding shifting beneath him with the patience of years. The air smelled of cold sage and last night's rain, the ground soft where hooves met earth. He carried a lantern hooked to the saddle, its warm glow swaying like a small sun against the coming light. The creek bed yawned below, a scar of cracked clay. Elias tugged the reins, ears catching a faint, unnatural sound, the metallic clink of rope against bark. He dismounted without a word, boots sinking into damp soil. The lantern's circle swept across the dry channel, revealing a pale figure slumped at the base of a cottonwood. A young woman, barefoot, bruised. "Miss?" His voice carried low, steady as a church bell. Clara stirred, eyes blinking open, the whites streaked with dust. "Don't. Please." "It's all right." Elias knelt, the creak of his knees lost in the morning hush. He sliced the rope with a swift draw of his knife, hemp fibers snapping like brittle twigs. "You're safe." Her wrists bore angry welts. She flinched as he draped his duster over her shoulders. Who are you?" "Elias Hart. I run cattle west of here." He checked the horizon. No rider, no dust trail, just the hush of dawn. "Can you stand?" Clara wavered but nodded. He lifted her gently, an arm strong as oak supporting her weight. Her head rested against his chest, heart beating a frantic rhythm against the quiet of the plains. "He left me," she whispered. "Said the coyotes would finish it." Elias tightened his hold. "Not today." He guided her toward his horse, voice firm but soft. "We'll get you warm. You're done with the dark for now." The gelding snorted, breath steaming in the cold. Elias helped her into the saddle, climbing up behind. The lantern swung, casting long gold streaks over the creek's cracked floor. Above them, the first streak of sun broke the horizon, washing the prairie in rose and amber. Clara closed her eyes against the light, exhaustion loosening her grip. Elias clicked his tongue, and the horse moved forward, hooves drumming a slow, sure beat toward the safety of Ashwood Cabin, away from the night and the man who had meant her death. The cabin rose from the pines like a secret the mountain meant to keep. Smoke curled from its stone chimney, soft against the morning sky. Elias swung down first, boots landing in frost-crusted needles, and helped Clara from the saddle. Her legs trembled, but the warmth of his duster and the steadiness of his arm held her upright. Inside, the Ashwood cabin glowed with the hush of an old life well kept. A small fire snapped in the hearth, throwing amber light across rifles mounted on the far wall and a row of worn family portraits. The scent of pine pitch and coffee mingled in the air. "Sit," Elias said, voice low but certain. He eased her into a chair near the fire, then poured water from a kettle, the steam curling like morning fog. Clara's eyes flicked to the rifles. "You live out here alone?" "Been that way a long while," he replied, handing her a tin cup. "But you're welcome as long as you need." The heat of the cup stung her raw wrists. She winced. Elias noticed and crouched to examine the rope burns. His calloused fingers were careful, respectful. "Who tied you like that?" His question carried no softness. Her breath hitched. "Silas Boone, my stepfather." The name came out like ash. "He blames me for every card he loses. Last night he tried to finish it." Elias's jaw tightened. "Boone's been trouble since I was a boy. Thought he'd learned fear by now." He stood, gaze on the window where the trees swayed. "You're safe here. But the law'll need your words." Clara shook her head, shadows crossing her face. "The law never comes quick enough." "It will," he said, voice a quiet vow. "And until then, I stand between you and him." Outside, a twig cracked. Both turned. Through the narrow pane of glass, the forest shifted. Dark shapes, just trees perhaps, or something more. The wind carried a scent of wet earth and whiskey. Clara gripped the cup tighter. "He'll come." Elias reached for the rifle by the door, movement slow and certain. If he does, he'll find more than he bargained for. The fire popped loud in the silence. Beyond the pines, unseen eyes watched, the forest holding its breath as dusk began to settle around Ashwood Cabin. Dusk poured across the clearing like ink. Lantern light flickered through the cabin windows, painting long gold streaks on the ground. Clara stood near the hearth, every creak of the pines outside pulling her tighter into herself. Elias sat at the table cleaning his rifle, each slow stroke of the cloth steady as a heartbeat. A branch snapped. Elias's head lifted. He set the rifle down with a quiet click and stepped onto the porch. The air smelled of damp needles and distant rain. Out past the tree line, a figure emerged, hat low, shoulders swaying with a drunkard's confidence. Silas Boone. "Well, ain't this cozy?" Silas drawled, voice rasping over the quiet like a rusty blade. "My runaway echo sittin' pretty in another man's house." Clara appeared in the doorway, firelight behind her, face pale but eyes hard. "Leave, Silas." He grinned, teeth flashing in the lantern glow. "You think you can hide from me? You're mine. Always will be." Elias stepped forward, boots grinding on the porch boards. "Not tonight. Not ever again." Silas tilted his head, whiskey glinting in the bottle he carried. "Old man, you don't know what you're courting." "I know a coward when I see one," Elias said, voice low as thunder. For a breath, the clearing held still, the hush of pine needles, the slow drip of rain from the eaves. Silas's grin wavered, then returned sharper. He spat into the dirt, a dark star against the fading light. "You got a rifle," he said, eyes narrowing, "but you can't watch her forever." Elias's hands stayed loose at his sides, but his stance never wavered. "The sheriff rides these parts. He'll hear what you tried." Silas laughed, a jagged sound that cut through the trees. "Law's just another card in the deck. I play my own game." He stepped back into the shadows, boots crunching on wet needles. "This ain't finished," he called, voice fading with each retreating step. "You'll both pay when the night's right." The forest swallowed him, leaving only the sigh of wind and the faint clatter of a distant horse. Clara gripped the doorframe, shoulders trembling. "He'll come back." Elias turned to her, eyes steady beneath the brim of his hat. "Then we'll be ready," he said, lantern light catching the steel of his resolve as the dark closed in around Ashwood Cabin. The horizon bled amber as the sun stretched its first fingers across the prairie. Elias rode hard toward the small town, dust kicking at the hooves of his bay gelding. Each stride of the horse echoed like a drum, announcing urgency to the waking land. Clara clung to him, her hands clutching the folds of his duster, eyes wide and haunted from nights she would not forget. Sheriff Amos Kincaid's office smelled of pine polish and old leather, the badge on his chest case, at the morning light gleaming like a promise. He leaned back in his chair, hands clasped, ears trained on every word Clara spoke. "He's dangerous," she said, voice trembling but sharp enough to cut through the quiet. "Silas Boone, he doesn't care who gets hurt." The sheriff nodded slowly, eyes narrowing. "Boone's been running wild too long. You've got the right to be heard, and I'll make sure the law rides with your truth." Outside, the town yawned awake. Horses whinnied in their stalls. The blacksmith's hammer rang in rhythm with the earth. But Clara felt the storm brewing beyond the hills. She shivered as the sheriff made a call, his voice steady, authority laced in every syllable. Meanwhile, Silas gathered his ragged crew, old friends from the saloon, drunks and gamblers, each one armed with bottles and fire in their eyes. "Hart's cabin won't save her," he growled. "We'll light that place up before the sun forgets the night." Clara pressed her hands to her face, but Elias placed a firm hand on her shoulder. "Let the law do its work," he said, voice low, carrying the weight of someone who had faced men like Silas before. "We'll meet him if he tries anything foolish." The sheriff mounted his horse outside the office, deputies flanking him like statues carved from iron. Their boots struck the ground with rhythm, the metal of spurs singing a warning the prairie could hear. Elias and Clara returned to the cabin, lanterns swinging, shadows stretching like long fingers behind them. The wind whispered through the pines, carrying scents of dust, damp earth, and the faint tang of whiskey from a distant ridge. Clara's voice, soft but defiant, broke the silence. "Do you think he'll really come back?" Elias glanced toward the tree line, jaw set like stone. "He'll come. And when he does, he'll find more than he bargained for." The prairie held its breath, the coming storm waiting for the night when Silas and his gang would ride.